In this video, I will be telling the fascinating and disturbing story of the disappearance of Sarah Stern. When I first heard this story, I couldn't stop thinking about it. For one thing, it takes place in my home state of New Jersey, locations that I know, in a community very near to and similar to mine. Even the accents and the way of speaking of the people in this case reminds me of people I know and have grown up with. It brought to mind certain questions about the nature of the criminal mind: paranoia, guilt, greed, friendship and betrayal, the prisoner's dilemma, and the concept of the banality of evil. Are there other cases similar to this that are never solved? This case could have went very differently at several critical points. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. It all started off quite mysteriously. This story is true, and it isn't pretty. Viewer discretion is advised. On December 3rd, 2016, at around 2:45 a.m., a 911 call was placed by an Uber driver to report a vehicle abandoned in the middle of the Belmar Bridge, situated on the Shark River Inlet between Belmar and Neptune City on the New Jersey shore. Even at that late hour, police sprang quickly into action. The vehicle, a 1994 silver Oldsmobile 88 Royale, was registered to a 96-year-old woman, but police quickly ascertained that it was driven primarily by her granddaughter, 19-year-old Sarah Stern. Michael Stern, her father, verified that it was his daughter's car when he was called by investigators at 3 a.m. He was in Florida, on a trip at the time, and when he learned his daughter might be in trouble, he began to drive home immediately. The vehicles had the keys in the ignition and was operable, so it didn't seem to be broken down. Its location in the middle of the bridge led police to fear for the worst, that young Sarah had ended her life by jumping. Body cam footage captured the initial investigation conducted by police. They went to the Stern residence and were able to secure entry, finding the family dog in his cage, but not Sarah or anyone else. They next spoke to neighbor Robin Draper, who lived across the street from the Sterns, with her daughter Carly, who was another of Sarah's close friends. Mrs. Draper relayed how on the previous day, Sarah had dropped off boxes of her late mother's belongings, mementos she wanted to be stored securely. From her and others, police would learn that Sarah had been having a difficult time since the death of her mother, and had spoken of both her desire to leave town and to move to Canada, as well as issues she had been having with her father. She told the officers that she had taken Sarah to doctors and the ER and other various appointments, and that her father, Michael, was never home. Police asked if Sarah's father had a girlfriend, and that's why he was never home, and Mrs. Draper said yes. Police were keen in those early hours to talk to Liam McAtasney, who had been with Sarah that day when she had brought the boxes to the Draper household. Liam's name came up right away as one of Sarah's closest friends, and police moved quickly, hoping that Sarah was with her friend Liam at the cottage house that he stayed with another friend, Preston Taylor. When police arrived at their place at 4 a.m., Liam greeted the officers and told them he had been with her just the day before. They had gotten food together, Taco Bell, hung out at Sarah's house and played video games, and Liam helped her move the boxes that Sarah wanted at the Drapers. He told officers that he had left for work at 4:30, subsequently realized that he had misplaced his phone. He had worked through his shift until 10 p.m., then came home and drank with his roommate Preston, and then went to sleep. Liam didn't recall Sarah saying anything unusual or behaving strangely, but he did reiterate what Robin Draper had already said, that she was having issues related to the death of her mom, her relationship with her dad, and spoke often of wanting to get away or go to Canada. He hadn't heard from Sarah since he left her house for work, and even though she might have called him, he didn't have his phone. But police urged him to try and contact her once he found his phone, and to let them know any information that could help locate her. The situation was not looking good, and many in the tight-knit Neptune community feared that Sarah Stern had sadly taken her life by jumping from the bridge. There was no good reason for her vehicle to be abandoned where it was, as the car hadn't broken down and had no obvious issues with operating. Divers went down into the frigid December waters of the Shark River Inlet, the body of water beneath the bridge, which feeds into the Atlantic Ocean. There was a great effort to try to locate any evidence of Sarah, her belongings, or anything that could explain where she had gone. Many friends, family, and strangers gathered together to search for any sign of the missing girl in the nearby shore area. Monmouth County Crime Stoppers offered $5,000 for information on Sarah Stern's disappearance. Michael Stern, who had lost his wife only a few years prior, was beside himself. He couldn't make sense of his daughter's disappearance. From his interactions with her the last day she was seen, he hadn't gotten any red flags. Sarah seemed to be in good spirits, despite other speculation about her mental state or their relationship. Texts between the father and daughter show they were communicating and keeping in touch like any normal family, keeping each other apprised of their plans, sharing pictures, and genuinely having a decent relationship. Tips and leads were coming in by the dozens and were followed up one by one, but none ever led to anything conclusive. One tip was from a driver who said he had passed the vehicle on the bridge that night. He said that he saw an individual standing by the car, and that individual didn't appear to be female. It looked like a man. Another witness, a contractor from Neptune City, said he passed Sarah's car on the bridge on his way to work, taking him and his son to their contract in Bradley Beach, a nearby shore community. There, he and his son witnessed a woman walking quickly down an alleyway in a manner suggesting that she didn't want to be seen. He made a remark to his son about it, and later in the evening, when they had seen the missing poster of Sarah, the contractor swore that that was the same woman he had seen in the alleyway at Bradley Beach. The community was reeling, but with little new or substantial information coming in, most people began to settle on the opinion that Sarah had indeed jumped. A tragedy, to be sure, but one that people could wrap their heads around. Even her friends and family, for the most part, began to accept the likelihood that Sarah had either chosen to jump the bridge that night. One person who couldn't accept that idea was her father, Michael. He said she seemed to be in reasonably good spirits and was friendly and sociable. Her passion for art and for a particular YouTuber or vlogger scene was driving her to become more involved and creative. It didn't make sense to him that she would take her life in such a manner, and without leaving a note or saying anything to anybody. With no sign of Sarah, no body, no evidence of foul play, investigators were genuinely stumped. They knew they needed to start focusing down on the timeline and her last known whereabouts, so they asked Sarah's best friend Liam, the last one who had seen her alive, to come down to the station for a more in-depth interview. Liam appeared to be fully cooperative. He detailed his relationship with Sarah and the actions on the final day anyone had seen her. He told them they had never been romantically involved, but they had been close friends since elementary school. Liam told the police that he suspected she might have been a lesbian, and she seemed to not be interested in boys or dating. She was more interested in art, YouTube, and video games. Sarah had gone to the prom 2 years earlier with Liam's roommate, Preston Taylor. and they were all part of a close-knit friend group which included Liam's twin brother, Seamus, and others. On that Friday, December 2nd, 2016, Liam drove his car to Sarah's house. Then they both got into Sarah's car and drove to Taco Bell to get something to eat. On the way back, Sarah stopped at her bank and went inside, while Liam waited in the car. The detective asked why Liam never mentioned that to them when they had last spoken. Liam said that it wasn't a big deal. He just stayed in the car, she just had to go to the bank, and he didn't ask her why. After that, they went to Sarah's and they played video games and took the boxes of belongings to the Draper house. At 4:45, a doorbell surveillance camera in the neighborhood, which picks up the end of Sarah's driveway, captured Liam leaving the Stern house, corroborating his alibi that he went to the steakhouse to work a shift as a waiter. That same camera captured Sarah's vehicle later that night pulling out of the driveway. The footage was too far and grainy to be able to see for certain if Sarah was the driver, but it was assumed that she was. Investigators questioned Liam hard because he was the last one who had ever saw or spoke to Sarah. Certain things appeared suspicious. For one thing, he had lost his phone during the time in question, and it eventually came to be discovered in an area near the Stern family driveway. But that also fit with his story, that he helped Sarah move the boxes and he was with her all day. Co-workers of Liam told police that he had left on 2 separate occasions to go back home and look for his phone. Liam also told detectives that Sarah had found a large sum of cash hidden in another property belonging to their mother. She had told him that it was somewhere between $20,000 and $100,000 or even $150,000 in old bills. The bills were supposedly in poor condition, some appearing burnt, some of them stuck together. Liam said that Sarah didn't trust her father and that they had a contentious and worsening relationship. He painted a picture of a verbally and emotionally abusive relationship and hinted that Sarah wanted to keep the money hidden from her father. Money has been for time immemorial a motive for crime. The mystery of Sarah's mother's stash of old bills is an intriguing one. Where did this money come from? Why was it being held and hidden in cash instead of brought to a bank? Why did Sarah's father not know about it? Why didn't he find this money? Who else had Sarah told? And where was this money now? Could the money be the reason for a third party to do harm to Sarah? Did Sarah use this money to fake her own suicide, disappear, and start a new life? After several hours of interrogation, the interview with Liam was ended when his mother came down to the police station to announce that she had got him an attorney. She had spoken to his father and a lawyer friend of hers who told her that it wasn't a good idea for Liam to go down and give an extensive interview without speaking first to a lawyer. Liam's roommate and another friend of Sarah's, Preston Taylor, was also interviewed by police the next day. The lead detective was vexed by Preston's monotone delivery and short answers, his lack of emotion over the disappearance of a supposedly good friend. However, Preston corroborated much of Liam's story and apparently did not have much to add that could give police any insights into what happened to Sarah. Detectives took note that something just felt off with Preston. Preston's family got him an attorney though, and with no evidence or leads, they ended the questioning of Preston. The case was at a standstill and starting to go cold. The holidays, Christmas, and New Year's came and went without any real progress in establishing what had happened. Michael Stern held on to hope. He continued to get the word out about his missing daughter and prayed that she would turn up, having ran away somewhere, maybe needing some time away. He was puzzled by the evidence in the timeline. One moment Sarah was there, living her life. The next she was gone, vanished, without a trace. What happened? And would it ever come to light? 2 months after her disappearance, police would get the lead they needed to blow the case wide open. What was uncovered was a disturbing and macabre crime that would send shockwaves through the beach community and the New Jersey shore. Many other friends of Sarah's were interviewed by police, and one of them was Anthony Curry. Curry was an inspiring filmmaker who had grown up in Neptune City with Sarah, Liam, and Preston and their group of friends before moving to Brooklyn to pursue his art. In late January, Curry would reach back out to Neptune City Police Department. He claimed to have information on the case, and he came with photos of Snapchat messages from his friend Liam McAtasney. Liam had been using the platform, which is known for deleting messages after a certain time frame, to reach out to Anthony Curry, telling him that the two needed to talk urgently, and in person. Being out of state in Brooklyn, Curry would learn the details of Sarah's disappearance over the course of several weeks, mostly through social media. Those details bore an uncanny resemblance to a conversation from Thanksgiving, weeks before Sarah's disappearance, and once Curry put it together, it sent shivers down his spine and compelled him to reach out to police. On that Thanksgiving 2016, as Curry visited friends and family from his hometown, he and Liam had an odd conversation. Liam pitched the aspiring filmmaker a storyline for a horror film, a murder of a girl for her inheritance money. The body would be thrown off a bridge and the car left on the bridge as well to make it look like she jumped. Preston, who was even named in the movie pitch, would act as the getaway driver. Curry felt that he was in danger, as Liam had told him this whole sordid plan, and now he desperately wanted to meet with him in person. Curry went to police, and the detectives wasted no time. They convinced Curry to wire his car for sound and video, and to try to record Liam discussing what he had done, and to obtain details that would close this case and give the Sturm family and Neptune City some closure over the missing teen. But what the undercover operation revealed was more grisly and surreal than anyone could have even expected. Sarah Stern had never been missing. She was murdered by her close friend Liam McAtasney in a premeditated and callous plot to obtain the old cash that Sarah's deceased mother had left behind. She had taken a portion of her money out of the bank from her safety deposit box and counted it with Liam. When she turned her back on him, he attacked, strangling his friend since the first grade in a stunningly senseless crime. In his recorded conversation with Anthony Curry, Liam casually brags about strangling his childhood friend, calling it a heist that he planned for 6 months as if it was an intricate and well-planned Ocean's 11 theft, instead of a shockingly cruel and pointless murder of a close friend. In gruesome detail, he talks about how it took over 30 minutes of grisly work to end her young life. The money totaled to less than $10,000, and it was all but useless in its old, stuck-together condition. Liam left her in the house in order to go to work, and called his roommate Preston to move the body, and to search for his missing cell phone, which he had misplaced during the murder. After Liam's shift, they returned to take Sarah's money and her safe and to drive her body to the Belmar Bridge. Liam positioned her body sitting upright in the passenger seat, and he described that he had studied the way Sarah backed her car out and tried to copy it exactly because he knew there was a camera that could pick up the vehicles that came and went to the residence. Liam described, in a secretly recorded admission to Curry, trying to hoist Sarah's body over the railing of the bridge, but it was too heavy, and he could see the headlights of oncoming cars approaching. He quickly shoved her back in the car until the other vehicles passed, while Preston repositioned himself behind Sarah's car and assisted heaving their friend's corpse over the side of the bridge before getting away in Preston's car. Only hours later, police would be alerted to the car on the bridge and would be knocking on Liam and Preston's door. Detectives had always suspected that their roommate's story just didn't add up. The two young men seemed to know more than they had admitted. But now, with Liam's own words recounting his grisly crime, police sprang into action, bringing both the roommates into the station, Liam in handcuffs and Preston without. Liam didn't feel like talking, but when Preston was confronted with the knowledge that police had learned the truth, he spilled everything in exchange for a reduced sentence. He minimized his involvement at first, but eventually admitted to moving the body while Liam was at work, and then helping Liam hoist Sarah's body off the bridge. He also led them to the money and Sarah's safe, which had been buried in Sandy Hook at one of the historic old mortar batteries. During the trial, Liam's defense would be that his confession to Anthony Curry was untrue, that he was just trying to impress his friends, or that he was auditioning for a movie role. The defense also pointed to the man that thought he saw Sarah alive in Bradley Beach the morning after the car was found. Liam chose not to testify and was found guilty of murder, receiving a life sentence without parole. Preston was found guilty of robbery-related charges, as well as charges related to desecrating human remains, and he received an 18-year sentence with a 15-year minimum before the possibility of parole. Stern's father, Michael Stern, read a statement to the court. He detailed the sleepless nights, the toll the proceedings had taken on him both physically and emotionally, and for his employment. "The pain of losing my only child grows worse with time," he said through tears. "My spirit is broken." What struck me about this case first and foremost is that Liam and Preston nearly got away with this crime, which, to be perfectly honest, is no small feat in this day and age. People have a tendency to look at these true crime situations, murders, and talk about the perpetrators like, these guys are idiots, these guys are sociopaths, clearly, or they have narcissistic personality disorder, they have this personality disorder or that. Which may be true, but I think the uncomfortable truth is that humans are capable of great acts of generosity and kindness, but they're also capable of senseless acts of cruelty, callousness, and greed. A lot of the body cam and interrogation footage is available to watch, and I'll put a link to that in the description. Liam does a very decent job of appearing to be fully cooperative to investigators, pushing his narrative of Sarah's depression and likely suicide, and not making a lot of mistakes in telling his story. Preston is visibly uncomfortable in his interrogation, but he also doesn't give them anything to go on. What's amazing is, in that retrospect, the same mistake that Sarah made, trusting her best friend Liam, was also the same mistake that Liam made, trusting his best friend, Anthony Curry, and his accomplice and friend, Preston Taylor. What I believe happened is that Sarah had found this money in another property her family owned, and she assumed it was from her mother and took it. She told Liam about it. But why was this old, possibly burnt and stuck together cash never brought to a bank? Where did it come from in the first place? There could be an even older crime, and this money had been hidden for decades. We simply don't know. Or it could be that the cash that someone from an older generation hid under their mattress over the decades somehow got to be in Sarah's mother's possession, and that she had hidden it for Sarah to find. Sarah put the physical cash in a safety deposit box and not for the bank account for a reason. Why? Where did she believe it came from? Why did she go to the bank after Taco Bell with Liam that day to take some of the money out? This is still a mystery, at least to the public, what this old burnt money is or where it came from. Could it be D.B. Cooper's stash? Or some 1970s bank robbery or drug deal? There has to be a reason it was hidden away for decades, to the point that it was losing condition and it was never put into a bank. One of Sarah's lifelong friends and neighbors, Carly Draper, testified that when Sarah and Liam brought the boxes of belongings to the Draper house that day, Sarah had told her that she was going to Canada with Liam. So I think Liam was trying to plant the seeds of that Canada narrative partially, and manipulating Sarah to take her money out of the bank so that he could have access to it physically. I think Liam had been formulating this plan for months, but he probably had a sense of urgency on this day because he didn't think he'd have another opportunity. Her grandmother, who she lived with, was recovering from a hospital stay at a relative's house, and her father was on vacation in Florida. I believe the grandmother and neighbor even came to the house at around midnight to check on Sarah, but saw nothing. In reality, they narrowly missed Preston and Liam at the house, getting the body into the car and the safe into Preston's car. Liam must have been casing Sarah's house to some extent because he knew a neighbor had a doorbell camera that could see the Stearns' driveway and front of the house. He used this knowledge to build evidence for his narrative, as the camera caught him leaving for work at 4:45, and then someone leaving in Sarah's vehicle at 11-ish. He describes in the confession recording with Anthony Curry crawling on the ground and manipulating the body into the car because of this camera. He also had Preston come to the house from the back to avoid being recorded. Liam had planned this robbery murder of his lifelong friends for months, and he told Curry that part of his plan was to be the last person with her, to be interrogated by police, and to use that opportunity to shape the narrative. He planted the idea that there was a lot of discord between Sarah and her father, that she was depressed, had a history of self-harming behavior, wanted to leave, wanted to get away, wanted to go to Canada, and was capable of jumping off the bridge. Now, since the truth has come out, Sarah's family has said she was happy and thriving, and that everything Liam said was bogus. But I have to call some of that into question. As I said, you can see in the body cam footage, as soon as police start talking to people, the neighbor, Robin Draper, comes out and actually follows the cop around, telling him what she knows. She said right away that she thinks Sarah is depressed, as she has just lost her mother recently. The cop actually said he knew Sarah's mother, so the community is small enough, everyone knows everyone to some extent. Mrs. Draper also says that Michael Stern is never home, and she talks about all the time she had taken Sarah to different appointments and stayed with her when she was sick. This is not to cast aspersions on anyone, but simply to recognize that a lie works better when there is a little bit of truth mixed into it. Liam used partial truths to create the narrative he wanted, and to create the perception that Sarah was in the mind frame to take her own life and jump off the bridge. In comments on news articles and Reddit posts surrounding the case, there are quite a few from people who claim to be from that community, who had known Sarah as well as Liam and Preston. They say that they were all part of a tight-knit friend group, and that most people just assumed that Sarah had indeed taken her own life. Despite the problems he had in executing his plan, Liam's plan did work. He had gotten away with murder and the robbery of some of the money. However, that money was unique and would have been easily identified, and it was a much smaller amount than he had wanted. No amount of money would justify killing anyone, let alone a lifelong friend and confidant. But $10,000 in old, burnt, useless cash being the motive for murder makes this crime particularly senseless, pointless, and appalling. Greed is a powerful motivator, but you'd like to think that most people wouldn't kill a friend over such a sum. What are the chances that you'd have two people capable of committing this act in the same friends group? What I believe got Liam caught and blew this case open is anxiety and paranoia. Liam had been stewing for 2 months on his crime, the investigation, and everything related to it. When he finally thinks he can speak safely, it's like verbal diarrhea. He spills everything. He also talks about how he's starting not to trust Preston, his accomplice. Whenever Liam says he hinted that Anthony Curry might know something, he said Preston would get very upset. And Liam wanted to allay Preston's fears so that he wouldn't think he had to take Anthony Curry out to keep him quiet. Paranoia led Anthony Curry to fear for his own life, as he began to learn the details of Sarah's disappearance, and he correlated that with Liam's Thanksgiving horror movie pitch. That's a big reason why I believe he went to the police later in January. He was questioned earlier in December, but he didn't tell detectives about the movie pitch until nearly a month or 2 later. Liam was desperately wanting to speak face to face with Curry and dropping hints that he can't speak over the phone or text message. In actuality, Preston was correct to be upset over Liam telling Curry about their crime, because that's what took them both down. I imagine Preston became increasingly angry and resentful at Liam for leading him into this crime, and then once he sees the investigators know, he spills everything to throw Liam under the bus and get a better deal for himself. Somewhat ironically, Liam's mother in an interview states, "She has nothing good to say about Preston Taylor," as if he was the mastermind behind the so-called heist. I do believe that he was involved in the planning, but I have to say, Liam was probably the mastermind here. I think people underestimate how much guilt and paranoia will affect them after they commit a crime, especially a murder, a violent crime. It's just not easy to act innocent if you are not innocent. Police use this all the time because it's one thing to lie in a quick conversation for a few minutes, but very few people can stand up to hours upon hours of interrogation. It's just psychologically and mentally, physiologically, almost impossible for a normal person not to break. In his taped confession, Liam tells Curry how he has been abusing drugs and alcohol ever since the murder, even taking LSD on the night Preston was brought to the police station for interrogation. Anyone who has any experience with hallucinogens will recognize that taking LSD while you and your roommate are being investigated for murdering your friend is a recipe for a hellish, paranoid trip of existential dread that is hard to even imagine. Anthony Curry was, I'm sure, shocked and appalled that his best friends would actually kill another friend in order to steal her money. But he also must have feared what Preston and Liam were capable of in that mind frame, and rightfully so. They had secured a pitiful amount of money that really couldn't even be used. Preston got $3,000 and Liam kept around $7,000 for himself. Preston could have made $5,000 just by turning Liam in and not participating, and he would have had to go to prison for 18 years. Murder and greed have been with humanity since the beginning, but it is always such a shock to see a case like this so close to home. I found this case to be totally fascinating because after so many true crime cases like Chris Watts and others, most of the time the murderers are just so delusional that they stood absolutely no chance whatsoever of getting away with it. So I found it morbidly fascinating to see a case where there was a plan and it was executed and it actually worked. It was totally senseless, and it boggles the mind that anyone would do that to a friend for $7,000, which they could have easily made over the summer working odd jobs and stuff. But it's still interesting to see in this day and age with CSI and all the technology that we see that's able to pinpoint where people are, all the surveillance that's on every storefront, to see someone plan out a murder robbery, to execute the plan, to have obstacles come in the way, and to, try to deal with those obstacles, and then to finally get caught. What brought down Liam and Preston was like Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. It was that, after all is said and done, the mental obsession, the paranoia to tie up all the loose ends, the erosion of trust among the perpetrators, led for Liam's ultimate heist, as he called it, to start crumbling around them. Multiple lives and families ruined, and a community reeling from shock. Hopefully, Sarah is resting in peace with her mother, and her family can find some closure. She was an aspiring artist and YouTuber, so I hope this was a good place and a good way to tell her story. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you got to the end of this video, please hit the like button, smash the subscribe button, and leave your thoughts and insights below.